We have Anna Barjazic. Yes. From Gen Portugal, Freddy Nurski from Gen Belgium, John Wally from Gen Kenya, Emmanuel Maillard from Gen Myanmar, Olesya Fortuna from Gen Moldova, and Jørgen Eriksson from Gen Norway.
Bouquet, while they're coming up, I wanted to add a few comments onto what you just heard from the panel. So just so you also know, this is the last piece of the conversation between you and your rest. And you're going to get a nice rest, by the way, before we have our splendid celebration welcome reception tonight outdoors. You're going to love it. So I want full undivided attention, because for us, what happens at the global level is only going to grow and expand if you all are successful, if it's not you, but at least in catalyzing others to make a Gen operation. And I'll tell you, we expect to be in 100 countries, closed in 100 countries, along the lines of what you're hearing about today, by the end of this year. So we are ambitious. This is the way we worked at GEW, and so we have a big challenge. So we want to appeal to you on this. But allow me to comment, if I just could, Bouquet, in a couple of minutes. I really want to talk about this fundraising business for a second, because I've been in the business of raising money now for a long, long time, but I've not really thought of it as raising money. What it's really about is it's about creating a brand or something that's sticky, that people come to you. I watched this carefully with Startup Weekend. I'll never forget having a conversation with Mark Nagar, who used to run Startup Weekend. I guess still does. No, he's left. I can't remember. But Mark is like the sort of one of the co-founders. And Mark said, you know, the interesting thing is, he said, yeah, we're getting the people picking up the phone, calling us, saying, can we give you money? And I thought, isn't that the great thing you want to be? Well, the reason he had it was because he had a brand, and he thought, this is something that we want to be a part of. That's what we're trying to do for you. And it's the reason that Peter's talking about, what is your strategy? How are you contributing to the national strategy? Most importantly, who are the people that are on your board? Because every country that I engage in trying to help you do this, I'm always faced with the same questions. Have you got the right people on the board? Are you going to do something which is going to take us away from all the ugly things that are happening right now? Are you doing something which was mentioned that's going to build upon the really good things happening right now? And are you going to do it in a very different way? And one of the unique things you can do with Gen is that when you need to, you can play the innocent card. Oh yeah, it's just Gen. I mean, you know, we're not part of the squabbling that went on before. We don't have, we don't have what do they say? We don't have a dog in the fight, or whatever is the analogy. Yeah, we're just playing here on neutral ground, and you can always blame Gen Global. So I really want to stress that the fundraising is not about. You notice that we actually have never hired a development director. Hiring people to raise money is really, the mechanics of the process. What really raises money is understanding how you're going to fit into being something useful, just like a startup does for their customer. Am I serving the customer with something they're interested in? Is my brand useful? And one of the most amazing people I've ever worked with in my career is here today, Susan, and I gave her a lot of credit. She's joined our board at GEW, and one of the great things she said to me when I asked her if she joined the board, I said, I really hope you're going to say yes. And she said, the reason I'm going to say yes is because the one thing that you guys have kept with a compass is you've kept it authentic. It's one of the nicest things people have said to us. And I think that's what you want to do. You want to keep authentic. Freddie, you're fantastic at this. I know I've been on the ground witnessing this. If you keep it authentic, if people think this is really the real McCoy, this is the honest thing, it's that along with the strategy, is your brand something that's exciting, and are you doing the right things? And just one last point I just pick up that Ewan mentioned, if I could. Ewan said, well, we've got the Gen thing. By the way, we're into 4 quadrants. You'll notice we used to be into 5, but we're really into support, understand, connect, and celebrate. But those don't have to be your 4 quadrants. You can, I saw actually in the Netherlands, Hendrik was here, I noticed he'd done his own version of the compass. and you know, of the universe chart. And it's great. He's managed to find how everything fits into those 4 quadrants. But the point is, I think that you don't, just so you know, you don't have to align those. You can say this is what Gen Global's doing, but by the way, what we do is going to be unique to what the needs are that we're trying to do. And also, you'll be making that up at the beginning, but if you've got the right people on the board, they're going to tell you what to do. They're going to figure it out. They've got a lot of high connections. So thank you for giving me an interlude in between this bouquet. I'm going to turn the conversation back over to the people that matter. Thanks.
I think from here, I would like to turn to Gen Myanmar, because I know you are doing things your own way, following what Gen has brought to your country as part of GEW, but getting a large advisory board to get together, to discuss ideas, to find low-hanging fruit, well, I'll leave the word with you.
Okay. Yeah, I used to do my things my own way. That's why my boss tells me also. I actually work for an American organization called Building Markets, and that's Building Markets that I've brought GW. I'm not brought GW in Myanmar, but we took over after 2 years, and we decided to scale it up. So we actually moved GW to the entire country. The last edition, we were in every state of Myanmar. And we also decided to move GW to GEN. So we created GEN this year. So it's been less than, a bit more than 6 months, I would say, within GEN. So the first Congress I came last year, I made like 3 kind of commitments. The first one that I will not be the only Myanmar delegates, which I'm not Myanmar, to come to the next Congress. So I have like 10 Myanmar people coming, entrepreneurs that are landing now, I think. So they will be here. Hopefully you will spot them because I hope they will wear the traditional longji. That was the first one, so that's done. The second one was to create GEN, Myanmar, that's done. The third one was to actually have the Congress in Yangon at some point, so I hope we are going to work hard on that one. So basically, we had the chance to rely on the work that Building Markets has done in Myanmar over the last 4 years. So we already started with a network of 3,000 SMEs that we have been supporting through private sector development activities. So we are mostly working with SMEs, and we decided to actually talk about entrepreneurship on a more wider term, and integrating startups, also building the network, not only with the SMEs themselves, but with the different partners, development partners, private companies, the government. Based on this work that we have been actually implementing, we managed to bring on board USAID, who was actually quite familiar with the work we have been doing with GW, and that actually entrusted us with the first year of funding to create GEN Myanmar. So we managed to actually get an office, get staff, and start activities that were mostly outreach sessions to continue the work outside of this GW to actually reach outside of Yangon and the main cities, but really bring like the entrepreneurship topic to a vast area in the country, and basically building. So there was questions about GN and GW. In Myanmar, GW is one of the activity of GEN Myanmar now. So that's where we are, 6 months within, some funding and some fun activities, but I'm sure you will ask more later about the activities that we're implementing.
Yes, I will have some more questions, but now we've started talking about to some of the longer established GEN countries, and Norway is actually one of them, although I think the activities have started picking up last year more than the year before. I think you've set it up maybe just before last year's Congress. When did you set up Gen Norway?
The formal registration of Gen Norway was in May 2015.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And could you tell us a little bit about how that process went and leading to 2017? Where are you and what you are aiming towards?
Yeah, it started in 2015 when we had a handover of the GEC host organization, and then we went for it. We had to map the ecosystem again anyway, so then we could just start the GEN process because GEN Global was starting to establish GEN, and we... and
you were one of the first ones, actually.
Yeah, our communities are often first movers. We've been that also in the... We also have a lot of players in the Techstars community with Startup Weekend, so we also embrace their movements early on. Yeah, so we were based on the GEV organization, so we have strong regions, but we never have any big national campaigns, and we still have strong regions. So most of our advisory board is made out of those leaders of those regions, and they still are. But as we are launching more GEN programs, we now are conducting a survey to get more information on the players who to involve in, and yeah, also use that as a marketing opportunity to. After this, it will be to bring them into the GEN Connect platform, of course. But yeah.
So one interesting aspect is that you have been focusing on bringing some of the GEW partners together physically, because this is something that you haven't been able to do before, from what I understand. And you've also been trying to make a stronger GEW, which I believe has been happening in the past few years. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we have started having an annual meeting. The first one was called the GEV annual meeting, but we will now be calling it the GEN annual meeting in Norway. And we are inviting some strong players from the countries around us to share their ideas on campaigns. Last year we had it in January, and this year we'll have it more close to the actual campaigning starting. Yeah, and much of the work now is preparing for a proper national campaign, as we are enrolling some national partners and sponsors, and hoping that we'll have a great national campaign.
Sounds great. So I want to continue with John Valley. Don't be so surprised. I think Gen Kenya was also one of the first entities. How long has it been since you've started working on this?
Probably 1.5 years, 1.5 years.
Could you tell us a little bit about the process?
Well, it's been a tough one, fairly, and the reason for that is trying to manage integration while trying to devolve. I think when we started GW, there's a lot of focus on, especially the startup communities, looking up to us or to GW and asking what's going to happen. And I think what has been interesting for us in the last, let's say, 1 year is the ability to, beyond registering a formal entity that is able, to share what's going on at the policy level, because there are lots of moving parts within the startup space or entrepreneurship space. So just being able to share that. Secondly, I think being able to empower and provide linkages as and when required, so that then whatever entity is able to run their own activities, so they feel autonomous and they're able to reach their target audience rather than looking up to us. And I think the third bit is really trying to have a global aspiration while working locally. And I think a very good example for us last year was through the GITR, the Get in the Ring, where we were able to start off with a local competition. And not only did we move from local to national, but we also had an African circuit that ended up with an Africa competition, and we have 2 teams that are going to be represented in Singapore. And so being able to sort of integrate while allowing others the latitude to continue doing what they are good at, I think has been tough and joyful. But I think where we're at now, where entities now have a better understanding of what is expected of them, not only during GW, but beyond. Because initially, people always just aspired for GW, and the question was, what's next? And I think through Gen, we're able to sustain continuous conversation throughout the year and build up a momentum towards GW.
Sounds wonderful. I'm going to have more questions on that, but I want to move, I want to jump a few people actually and move to Olisea, because she has been engaged in our network since 2013. 2013, and she actually started what she does with establishing GW Moldova, which has now become Gen Moldova. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about how you did it in your country?
We started as a Gen Moldova because when we started as GU, we had many questions from, a lot of questioning from our partners. Basically, they were saying that we don't want you to be the ones that are taking all the credit for what we've done together. So we've invited them to be part of GN. And of course, because we wanted them to commit, we structured it in a way so they can have a stake by being a member, which means that they will need to commit with some money. Not a lot of money, because we would like to integrate the communities. And our motto is global community starts locally, so we would like to be able to distribute Gen as much into the regions as possible, because the need there is more stringent. So in 2017, we are going to be 3 years old as GN Moldovan. So in June, you are invited to come to Moldova and we will celebrate together. But in time, we have understood that it's better to be very fluid, for us at least, and to be able to integrate all the efforts. Because every organization, every entrepreneurial organization, they're very focused on having their leadership in something that they know very good how to do this. And we understood that we cannot compete with all the initiatives that are in Moldova. So we've established ourselves as a facilitator, as an organization that tries to include and promote other activities by showcasing them in the Global Entrepreneurship Week, and also by involving them in other activities that we are better at. And we are better at some creative activities, women entrepreneurship activities. Last year, what we started in terms of integrating more local communities, we started an experiment in how to do that, because we didn't think we are the smartest in Moldova. So we invited different experts and different organizations that have different programs there, and to start to build the trust mechanism at the local level with their participation, not with the effort of us defining their local ecosystems, but for them to define where they are in the local ecosystem development stage, and to find a way to integrate their efforts, because trust is really an issue in my country.
Sounds interesting, and I know that within these 3 years, you've tried a wide range of Gen programs. Yes. And you actually decided to focus on a number of them. I will be asking you more questions about this, but I want to turn from here to Freddie, because when you're talking about, things not being easy, I think Freddie was, you might remember last year, he was the person asking all of the questions. But this year, he may be back with many of the answers. Freddie, could you tell us a little bit about Gen Belgium and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, indeed, Gen Belgium as a foundation has been created. In fact, the 1st of this month, finally, we got all the signatures. So what we did is we decided to go for access to corporates. So we talked with the several Chamber of Commerce in the country, the different Federation of Small and Medium-Sized Businesses, and the Federation of the National Federation of Large Corporations. So all 7, together with Gen Global and myself, we have now co-founded the foundation, and each of them have like 2 seats on the board, giving us really a platform that will do some kind of light coordination of all the entrepreneurial activities that exist in Belgium, because Belgium has not only 2 or 3 languages, but I think more than 200 initiatives that all are financed by all kinds of organizations. And talking about the advantage of a strong brand like ours, that definitely in the beginning was not that positive, because everybody was scared. So everybody was scared that because of the big brand, we would take away all the money and become one big organization. So we positioned it over the years as an organization that was complementary and a platform for cooperating. So the strategy always has been with GEW to have everybody participate in the week. And as an organization, as a host, we choose one particular topic, and we then invited several players that were active in that topic to co-organize with us an activity. It has been like a social entrepreneurship. It has been a women entrepreneurship 1 year. And the big advantage there was that we could bring together, in each case, between 15 and 20 different organizations that were competing with each other but never met each other. So suddenly, at the end of the activity, not only the participants were coming and said, this was very useful, but also the organizations were coming and say, hey, this was great. Finally, we have been talking to each other, and maybe we can now put some budgets together, 2 or 3, and do something bigger or something better. And that philosophy has then helped to go for the creation of Gen Belgium, because that's, in fact, a formalization of the way that we will be working.
Thank you, Freddie. Again, last but not least, we have Anna, who has been with our network for a while through Ivan, so she knew us quite well, but she recently became, I think it was last summer, the Global Entrepreneurship Week host in Portugal. And since then, she has done so much that we have had difficulty in catching up. So Anna, could you tell us a little bit about how did you start this and where you are now?
First of all, thanks a lot for having me here. I'm really excited to be here and also learn from all of my colleagues. Second, I think that in order for the audience to wake up a little bit, we can give an applause to Gen team, which has been doing an awesome job, especially with Bouquet. So where's the applause? Huh? Yeah, so I don't think it's very easy for them sometimes to catch up with more than 160 countries, but they've been always there and they helped a lot, so thanks. And some of you guys, for example, Freddie, so that was really great. So what we have done so far in Portugal. So I got kind of caught up in Gen Portugal shortly before the Global Entrepreneurship Week. As Bouquet has mentioned, I already know quite well the Global Entrepreneurship Week and the organization, because I have been leading the Business Angels Week, which is a very similar activity focused on the business angels in the EMEA region. So I was really happy to take on this challenge to try to do a similar thing in Portugal with a little bit of a different kind of a focus. So we basically relaunched the Global Entrepreneurship Week in Portugal, and we have been working flat out some weeks before the Global Entrepreneurship Week happened. So it was actually, this kind of setting has enabled a lot of good results, yeah? So we have reached out to, so to say, verticals of the entrepreneurial ecosystem in order to cover as much as we can, and to cover as many stakeholders that we can within the country. So we have the Association of Venture Capital Funds, we have the Federation of Business Angels, we have the Association of Young Entrepreneurs, we have the Association of Incubators, we have a pillar of social entrepreneurship, which are all working together with me on setting up GEN Portugal. So I hope, because I actually sent articles of association yesterday to Jonathan, so I hope we can close this issue until the end of March and to have the legal entity. But apart from this, you know, we had this Global Entrepreneurship Week thing.
One thing you told us is that you actually found a pro bono lawyer
exactly,
to do your...
yeah. So we have one
happen?
of the top law firms in Portugal that is working on the statutes for GEN Portugal pro bono, which has been awesome. So you see, like, you know, things are just like kind of attracting themselves to this initiative. The point is, like, what is very important for us, or for me, you know, I've been talking to a number of stakeholders, to embassies, to, you know, you name it. And the point is basically to have a year-round initiative. So it's not like only Global Entrepreneurship Week, because some of the people, they are familiar with it, but, you know, we are trying to kind of, you know, expand this a little bit. So we are working on, now we're gonna have Get in the Ring, actually in around 10 days, for the first time happening in Portugal. And actually there is one thing that, you know, we kind of aspire to be another kind of GEN competition. It's going to be the GEN Portugal Boat Challenge. So we are going to have a boat going from Lisbon to up to Nordic countries, where we are going to gather blue economy entrepreneurs. And I'm looking for your support from my GEN colleagues to take over some of the work in the local areas, like Belgium. I already talked to Freddie, like England, like don't worry, I'm going to reach out to you later. But I mean, that's the point. One of the challenges that we have been facing, or I have been facing talking to people, I mean, you have to understand that Portugal is a very well-developed ecosystem, okay? This is a country of entrepreneurs. They're doing stuff. They conquered the world, you know, and they're very proud of it. So the point is that there is a lot of these initiatives, and I heard from other colleagues here, obviously, that, you know, there is a lot of competition out there. What I want to, like, kind of my pitch to the people is, okay, this is the strongest brand for entrepreneurship in the world, you know? It's important to be a part of it. We are not competing anyone, okay? We are not a governmental, you know, body that is trying to impose something. So, but the point is, like, from the GEN point of view, you know, the challenge is to basically kind of explain to the people what is the value of this kind of affiliation. You know, what is the value? What are kind of the tangible outcomes that people can relate to after, you know, being part of any kind of initiative that we want to kind of get across. So I think, you know, I've been signing a lot of MOUs with people so far, you know, having like all these promotional activities happening. And I think it would be, you know, maybe, you know, just a message for guys at GEN, for the GEN team, to think about maybe like how to, because in Portugal, like, people want internationalization. They wanted that stamp of quality, you know, that they have, you know, done something great, and this has been recognized out there. So I think, like, for the mechanisms, you know, it's great, you know, there is tons of these global competitions, you know, that are being facilitated, etc. But maybe some kind of a fast track, you know, maybe something like, which is kind of more, you know, a bridge from GEN Global to GEN Local, you know. So that would be my story. Thank you.
I think we are working on an answer for this. So what we can do more for GEN countries for the proof of concept, and I think this will be the next step. So we will be, as we have now close to 20 GEN countries, our efforts will also focus on, you know, how we can support you and how we can help you achieve that impact. So that's the next question, and I think, like you said, we will be introducing some further tools for you to use, for you to share with your stakeholders. So it is coming, but I know the audience has been watching for a long time, but we would like them to start talking about what they're doing and maybe ask our panel some questions, or from us, the people from the previous panel, for some questions as well. So I'm coming, and I'm just gonna again bully you with my microphone. Anybody here? Any questions or any?
Okay. Center one. Okay.
It looks like you want to say something about Morocco and what you're doing.
So I'm Naufal from Morocco. Just to give, last year before last year we do not have any Jew activities at all. So last year our challenge was how to make 20 to 30 organizations work on this week. But the challenge was a little bigger than that, because in this week Morocco held COP22, which is a global event about climate change involving presidents and kings of all countries around the world. But the good news, we make our challenge and we make things happen, and we had few organizations organizing their entrepreneurial event under the Jew brand, which was a great experience. Maybe one thing which is really important when we talk to other organizations, they need to understand that it's their event, it's their succeed, and Jew is it only a place when we make things become bigger because we do all the same things. This is the most important thing I believe the organization in your countries need to understand. Jew is not here to take their success. It is a way to put their success in light. Thank you.
We have a comment over here.
Hello. My name is Mohamed Donga Christian. I'm from Chad. I'm the national coordinator of Network of Young for Development and Leadership in Chad. GEW host in Chad. We have engaged with GEW last year, and as usually we were just running a program with artisans, and then we put this program during the Global Entrepreneurship Week and to celebrate also Global Entrepreneurship Week with all the world. During the last year, we hosted 3 different competitions. We hosted Creative Business Cup. We ran a startup weekend and Future Agro Challenge. My innovator is at the Agripreneur Summit right now, and we hope that Chad is going to win the competition. On the 1st April, we're going to also host Get in the Ring. The only challenge right now with creating GE and Chad is the way to figure out how to put all these stakeholders together. It's a matter of culture too, because people are not used to coming all together and run only in a unique platform. Hopefully, we did a lot of impact with our competition, and it is people that are asking to be in GEN right now. And I think when I'll go back, I'll try to meet more people in order to set GN chart. But I have a problem with understanding difference between governing board and board of directors. Maybe it's a matter of English too, because I speak mostly French. And I really want someone to mentor me, to coach me in order to really figure out a best way to set it. Thank you.
bouquet. What I'm going to do is invite Freddie to comment on that business of how do you get people that the culture is not there of them working together. I obviously sit on Freddie's board, and I want to have him quickly explain again, the people that you have assembled to that board have never worked together in history. And you were very patient about doing it. So he's going to comment on that. Before I do, can I just make sure we answer the question? So from a technical perspective, we actually had a presentation to give you, but just so you're aware of it. So there is a governing board is the same as a board of directors. It's just that the word governing shows that they actually have responsibility for the organization. So they have a legal and a fiduciary responsibility. So it's the same thing. The only difference is having senior advisors is non-executive role. They're just advisors. Some people like to call it an advisory board. We actually recommend you have a group of senior advisors and don't call it a board because that gets confused with your governing board or your board of directors. But the key thing is to make sure that you've got some people, whatever labels you're using, who are the people who are actually going to say, I'm going to form the legal entity and my name is going to be on it. And then others who are just advisors. So that's the short answer to that. But Freddie, do you want to answer the complicated question or offer one word of advice on this?
Well, it's always difficult, but the best thing is to talk and to keep on talking. It takes time. But in my case, I think it took a year and a half, Jonathan, something like that. Involve Jonathan, because that was really in the beginning. Because it adds a lot of credibility if you can have the president there. What we also did is, in our case, we also asked the commission to participate. You remember, to say, you know, cooperation is important. So the more people, other people you find that say that's important, the more your message will get through.
Do we have somebody else with questions or comments before we wrap up? Okay, over here, right?
Hello.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Soumeya Rashidi from Gen Algeria, and I wanted to share our experience because so Gen Algeria has been founded a year and a half ago, and our main activity, I mean, we focused on two areas: students and women entrepreneurship. The women program was ran by Fatiha Rashidi, who went on a roadshow with the Ministry of Women in Algeria to promote women entrepreneurship and to teach and mentor women entrepreneurs around the country and in the desert and the Sahara. The other program was the student program, and we promoted the Campus Ambassador program in Gen Algeria. And the Campus Ambassadors organized ESA, the Entrepreneurship Summer School, and we supported them as Gen Algeria. The first edition was a huge success, and we had basically almost 5,000 students last year. I want to share this experience because I would love for countries, especially African countries, to be involved with us for the next edition in July, and try to bring students with them to be involved in Gen Entrepreneurship Summer School in Algeria to create student exchange programs around entrepreneurship, just for 5 or 6 days. And to promote our event and encourage you to come and bring your students to Algeria in July, I want Kevin Langley and Olisia to tell just a few words about the event because they were speakers there. And if Mark Ortmans is here, it would be really good for them to share their experience because it was kind of crazy. Thank you.
Jonathan, it's a great example of how powerful GEN and GEW is, and I'm very fortunate to serve on the board with Jonathan and assisting as best I can in certain efforts. But last year in Colombia, I sat with one of the GEN student ambassadors from Algeria, and she asked me to go speak in Algeria, and I said, well, how many students will be there? And she said, 300 to 500. So I was like, great, let's do that. I'm interested in going to Algeria and meeting some great students. When I showed up, there were 5,000 students from all 48 provinces who were some of the most inspiring, energetic, eager to learn students that I've ever met. And we had such a great time. They're so starving for anything entrepreneurial and anything that creates hope. And what we did was interesting exercise by getting students that drove in from all over Algeria. It's the first time some of them have even traveled outside their province but also what's more important is those students connected with other students from the other provinces. And we sat under this beautiful tree after the session was over, and they just didn't want to leave. And I'm still communicating with them on WhatsApp. So it was a very powerful and meaningful experience. So I want to encourage everybody to connect the dots like we've been doing with our ecosystem, but in particularly focus on the students. And maybe we can get some other students from other countries to come visit them, because it's a great opportunity. Thank you.
I think from my behalf, I would like to say that this is a great way that we can show that GN countries can collaborate together, can do great things together, and I'm happy that GN Algeria has done so many wonderful things. And I would like to share that it was so different for me to be for the first time in an African country and talking about women entrepreneurship and talking with students that wanted to develop their businesses, and they wanted to actually learn more about themselves and where they can see their future, how they can create their own jobs, how they can create their own perspectives and where they stand in their own societies, in their own communities. And as Kevin said, many of them have followed on that. They've developed women labs in different villages, and I get like questions about what kind of activities should we do that? What kind of programs should we develop that? Where should we start? At the same time, I see some of the kids involved in student programs and in programs like Seed Stars, and they're like, I want to volunteer, I want to be able to contribute, and I want to learn from the entrepreneurs that are in GEN platform, that are in these competitions, and that are in these communities. So I think that's a really good exercise of how GEN countries can collaborate and create a better and added value for the global entrepreneurial community.
Thank you for that. That's really wonderful. And I want to add 2 points before we go to the next question, which is an important insight moment. I just went up and gave a talk in Montreal, and all of the Algerian community came up to me in Montreal, and they said, you know, and in fact there were Moroccans and a lot of the Maghreb area who've moved to Quebec. And they said, the one thing you have to remember when you get to the Global Entrepreneurship Congress is to figure out what we can do to enable, to make more Franco alliances. And you're talking about cooperation. We heard from, you know, countries where, English is not the first language. And I would hope that during the course of our time here, we could pick that up. And I encourage those countries that have been successful, particularly in what can be a slightly different culture, to be able to take a leadership role in doing that. I also want to point out, related to that, that obviously what you're seeing here is what can happen when you have a speakers bureau, because if you're all willing to register yourself as I'm willing to go out and tell a story about this or the other, this is the way you can do it and not have to be dependent upon whether I managed to get hold of Kevin Langley or what have you. So I do hope that on those 2 areas of collaboration, it's just wonderful what you did. So you were going to say something else?
Yeah, I wanted to say that sometimes even raising questions, because sometimes we don't know about how to do some things, and having someone on board, it was just wonderful, because we were traveling with BK City side by side, and we were talking about different programs, and I was sharing with her ideas, and she's like, oh, but I know who can help you. And yeah. That's where I know where I can go and find more help in the programs that I want to deploy in our countries.
That's great. Oh, Karim.
Yes, thank you. Karim from Senegal, but we're also active in France and different countries. And actually, we're part of the GEN network for several years. And as you know, some of the delegates have always expressed their interest to also be more active with the Francophone issue because of the language. You know, they can be involved as much as they can, and we know that the Francophone area, unfortunately, even if the term entrepreneur is coming from the French, they are not so active as entrepreneur. So we really need to push in the Francophone world. So we have been very active to push the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, which is the main Francophone organization worldwide, 80 states. to be involved in the GEN network. Actually, they came twice for the GEC, and they have been very impressed. So we managed to bring them, and they are now involved. They have a stand at the conference, and they want to improve the involvement. They bring 40 entrepreneurs to come here and to participate. So we hope that we will build a network, and we'll launch a session on Tuesday to launch a network of Francophone entrepreneurs during this week, and they will support it for 3 years. So this is something very great, and we hope that we will link it to the GEN network, and then we'll be more vibrant with the Francophone entrepreneurs. So.
Hello, I'm David from Taiwan. A comment and also a question to the panel. So the first question is, for a very young ecosystem like Taiwan, also that doesn't have a strong home market, what is the best way to build consensus when there are different players or different key stakeholders for the preparation of GEN country? That's the question. The comment or the little experiment that we have done is we actually create a line chat group or FB group for the past 3 years. So it's actually took us 3 years to build an ecosystem map that everybody kind of agree. But it's a very long effort, but it's worth it. So I also encourage any country that shares similar situation like Taiwan, maybe building the startup ecosystem map is a good way of preparation. It may take a bit longer. So right now, the Taiwan startup ecosystem is used by governments, by media, and it's curated by 500 people in the line group. So I still want to know if there's a quicker way to build a consensus in the preparation for the GEN for a very young ecosystem like Taiwan. Thank you.
Brilliant question. I don't think, and I'll go back to what Freddie said, there's no shortcut. When it comes to consensus building, it takes a lot of time. I think we started our conversation more than 5 years back when Jonathan came into Kenya. And I think what's important really is being able to identify the leaders in the space that you are in. Because the moment that you have the leaders with you or aligned with you, then everyone else will tend to fall behind them. So it's great you have a map. So therefore, you have a point to start with which you can identify the movers within whatever space, whether in academia or angel investing, whatever space that is important. But I think when it comes to consensus building, what you need is you need to put in time, like any other relationship, and build that. But I think the value for GEN, which I've realized for Kenya, is when GEN is created, you provide neutrality. So whoever is part of GEN feels safe supporting the efforts rather than earlier on when we used to run GW separately. So the benefit of having GEN or the dividend is that you have a clean slate where you can pull everyone's effort and resource towards one agenda.
Two things I would advise. One is to ask the ecosystem. You have the map, so do a quick survey with direct questions and open questions. What do you want? What can GEN be for you? And the other thing is you have the map. You can open doors into the different programs of GEN. So if you have a business angel network, you can connect them. I didn't see if Taiwan was on the list, but also in the Future Agro Challenge on the other programs, open doors for them. We do that for single entrepreneurs, but we can also do that for the organizations in the countries.
I would just like to follow up on this. I think it's very important to stress out this inclusion factor, which John was mentioning before. So when you are trying to build such a vehicle, so to say, like in order to power something in your country, it's very important to have everyone on board. Maybe you're not, on the same page with everyone, but it's like people need to feel welcome. It needs to be global. People need to be respected, and you need to give them some space also to talk. And you know, like it can be also kind of sometimes a kind of crisis communication thing. It's very important that you know, you present yourself as someone independent. You know, you are not defending anyone's other interests except of mutual benefit. So, you know, there is no reason why not to collaborate with you.
Just like a word on Myanmar, which is also a very new ecosystem, where only mapping has been done like only recently, and still like it's in construction. I think we're taking the decision to be open to everyone, but we also recognize we could not have everyone on board providing like decisions. So we decided to have a steering committee that was limited to 5 to maximum 10 organizations. Those organizations were actually leaders of their own clusters. So we tried to follow a little bit the old thinking behind Gen as well. So we had identified women, youth, tech, finance, and we just like decided to go with organizations that were having a strong presence, that were actually having a strong reputation, and that were recognized as leaders, as John was saying. And then they were part of the steering committee. So we have them like every month, as much as possible. Every member should be meeting every month. Of course, it's a living thing, so you will see it drop out, and you will see like the steering committee list is going to change over the last, already in 6 months it has changed, so let's see what's going to happen for the next 6 months. We also created something we call the Gen Assembly. It's a quarterly event where it's actually not a consultation, but a kind of a open, messy, chaotic forum where everyone is welcome to share their thoughts, like every actor of the ecosystem. This is usually a good moment to discuss, to get ideas that are going to be after discussed by the steering committee. So that's recognizing that not everybody can actually be fully committed and active since the beginning, and it's trying to start with a small cell that is quite recognized and that's going to actually drive the boat for at least the first few months.
I have one insight that I would like to add. It's we now are exercise to start developing local communities and also working with, let's say, an industrial community, because right now we're working with the fashion industry as well. One of the most important thing is to give ownership to community leaders. So basically we need the community to identify its leaders, and they need to share that ownership of the community. So it's never about those that start the exercise, it's those that are active in their own community. They should start taking charge of that. They should start having activities, having the interests, and having the understanding. And yes, mapping helps a lot because they can see where their best fit is it. Is it at the educational, inspirational level? Is it at investing and developing further the SMEs, so they understand better at what stage of business development the particular leader is better at. So I think it's more about the leaders in those communities and convincing or not giving them credit for the value that they create in that community.
I have a question, please. I have a microphone, so I get to ask a question. So listening to these guys about their experience in starting Gen in their countries is really informative and made me more enthusiastic about starting Gen Palestine. But my question here is for the Gen people, Jonathan and Peter. So we have the intention to start Gen Palestine. But given the individuality and the privacy of each country and its circumstances, how the process change with the circumstances? What's next? What shall we do? So we do have the intention to start Gen Palestine. What's next? Thank you.
I guess you need it more than me now. Jonathan, is he in the room? I mean, I'm happy to answer if Jonathan's not here. We call it national leadership connected to a global network. So your national leadership will decide your programming in the country. You would have an independent board of directors, and then a managing director that would implement the programs that the board decides upon. In some cases, Jonathan would be a member of the board. The governing board is usually 5 to 7 people, and Jonathan would have 1 vote with the other 5 to 7 people. Do you want to go further?
If you're talking about what's the next step, what do I need to do this? Yes. Yes.
The flowchart.
And even given that we have this, my organization is a cross-sectorial body that's overseeing the ecosystem, etc. So it looks like GEN. So how GEN will be integrated in the HCIE or independent from it? So we need kind of needs assessment or evaluation of the situation first before starting the GEN. You know, like we have this situation or this mature ecosystem in Palestine. What shall we do?
That is something that we would need to discuss together to come up with a solution on how we can do it. And I know that this is why you're here this week. So this will be something we will discuss because, like we've been saying, in every country the situation is unique, and the person we work with is also unique, has unique capabilities that we want to make sure we make the best use of. So we definitely would need to talk over how we can achieve it together. Marcel wanted to answer a question, and then we have another question here, I think.
Yes, I just want to quickly add something what we have done in Switzerland. It's always the same question, how do we start? And I think everyone faces the same difficulties. At the beginning, we are so enthusiastic after these events, coming back to our countries, and they don't really understand what's GEN or what's the idea behind. And if you want to partnership with all existing players, it's not going to work. Even government, we discovered in Switzerland, they're really pessimistic or skeptical because it's this US organization. What's this US organization doing, and what's the influence of US behind? So actually we spoke with all of them, or we try still. We have already spoken with the most. So we speak with them, but afterwards we go to execution. So I think we convince them later on that they naturally come to GEN, to the GEN Switzerland, for example, and they want to partnership later on with us. We're not going to force anything. And what really leveraged the efforts in Switzerland was the board, because this also gives you credibility, because otherwise you're a humble guy and have these huge programs in the back and the GEN vision you created on paper, but you don't have any credibility. So I think forming and already starting early, speaking with people or considering who can join the board of directors. And I think board of director or this board is very essential, that you have a good bunch of people together with the right background. This is very essential. And don't waste too much time on the papers, because it's changing as we heard from the audience or the stage. It's changing very fast. After 6 months, it's already changed.
Hi, I'm Hossein from Tunisia. One of the exciting things that I'm seeing with this GEN phenomenon is that you have single entry points in any ecosystem in any country, which is the GEN umbrella. I'm wondering, how are you guys taking that to the next level, where you become actually the exporter of that umbrella to another country that have another GEN when you have another ecosystem? So, for example, for us, I know that when I used to work for TED conferences before, I had Nofel as my contact in Morocco, and it was easier to get into that ecosystem. So how do we foster that?
Does anybody have an answer? Who has an answer? Raise your hand. Freddie?
Oh, sorry. Well, it's a good question. You know, it's a standard answer when a question is asked, but I do think it's a good question, because it's one of the main difficulties we are also facing for the moment, until you concretely start working and talking with each other. And I think what we have done in the last 12 months with our communication system, we now have something that facilitates communication. And another thing is also that we have been brought in contact with different people through Bouquet, because she knows who is working on what topic, and then talking not immediately with 20 countries, but maybe with 2-3 countries, and try to see what strength you have. And I have one very simple example in between Belgium and Holland. In Belgium, we are working more with, we do not work with the universities. In Holland, GEW basically has been created or is run by universities. So we have different ecosystems, but by talking to each other, we have developed a whole new relationship with the universities in Belgium, which is bringing us to a very different level. And in the Netherlands, they have now much closer involvement with the companies, taking them also to a very different level. So for me, essential is that, you know, we have the ability to have meetings, and that is also what we got an agreement with the European Commission, with DG Growth, that they would help us and facilitate us getting together within Europe at least twice a year, so we could not only participate in the SME meetings of the Commission, but also have our own agenda and meet face to face and hopefully learn how we can become more concrete on projects that we can work on, because that's always the difficulty. You know, it's nice to meet, but how do you take it that one step further?
I'll probably, you say TED Talks? Okay, brilliant. I'll just use an example that now that Erwin is here from Get in the Ring. Sometime in November of last year, they were approached by the Dutch government to do an event in Kenya. And because we were already there and we were partners in GITR, he recommended us. And so together, we were able to do the competition for Africa in Nairobi. So typically, in what we do, we spend a lot of time in the youth space. But then, thanks to him and the connection, we were sort of accelerated. It was a steep learning curve because it was the first one we were doing. But then we moved to a different level to execute another event. So I think those connections are there. The challenge really is amongst ourselves, I think 165, to sort of trigger the opportunities that lie within. But yes, I think every entity as it is able to open up opportunities for each other.
Thank you very much to our panels and to our audience as well. This has been a great conversation. Thank you.